Good morning, our city. How you guys doing today? If we haven't had a chance to meet yet, my name is Mike. I'm one of the pastors here, and I'm so glad you are here. I want to welcome everybody tuning in online, specifically my beautiful wife with those sick kids. Love you guys. Hi, Tyson. Feel better. Hi, Micaiah. Feel better. Thank you, Tierney, for doing that. If you are new, welcome back. If Easter was one of your first experience, I'm so glad that you decided to come back and check out the church and be here with us. We're kicking off a brand new series, like Pastor Jimmy just said. It's called The Power Possible, and this is all about how do we take the limits off of God? How do we actually look at impossible situations and bring them into the realm of possible again in our own life? And what I want to do today is I want you just to remember a time in your life that you just begin to take the situations that just felt really like you had hope, you had dreams, you had ambitions, like everything that was just like, man, this is going to be so fantastic. And then life started happening and then started experiencing some disappointment and some heartache and some pain and some frustration. And then slowly but surely, some of those dreams started to go and fade and die, right? Like we all experience some life and some situations that take place and like things that are happening are just kind of like, man, life is going to be great. I'm excited for what this is, whatever endeavor that you're going to be on. And like we have all this hope in it, right? And then some things can take place and then we can just kind of like start settling for what that is. And when it comes to faith, for me specifically, we learn a lot of how to talk about things really well and to not make it seem like, oh yeah, that's impossible. I don't believe in that. I gave up on that. We just find different language for what it is. And when we're functioning with God, it's not like we completely leave our faith. So I remember when I was experiencing some of these things early in my life, like in my young 20s, and I was still showing up. I was still praying. I was still loving God. But at some point in my life, I just found an experience that just goes, oh, that's just not going to happen. So I did a couple things. I stopped praying for it. I stopped expecting for it. I stopped talking about it. And I just began to allow certain things that at one point in my life, I really had a big dream and a real passion and a hope that this thing could come to pass. And after experiencing a handful of disappointment, I started carving language around it that just says, oh man, that's just going to actually just leave my life. And I'm just going to make peace that this is no longer going to happen. And what we do when we do that is we actually create a theology that we don't even intentionally create of disappointment, right? Have you ever seen the newly married couple that's just like all excited, right? Always holding hands, walking with their arm around them. Have you ever tried that, by the way? Go walk in with like your arm around someone and you have to like, how in sync you have to be, like stop walking like that. And Tierney, if you know my wife, she's real small. So I'm like kind of like this. I'm like, gosh, why are your legs so small? Like this is impossible. It's a lot of work and effort for a situation, right? And the reason why you do things like that is because your just heart's exploding with love and joy. And it's like, this is awesome, right? Like when you're like first married and like you're snuggling in bed and you're just like, yeah, man, we're going to hold each other and sleep. And then you get, I don't know, weeks, months, years removed from it. You're like, the reason why we bought a Cali King is so you can be on your side. Don't touch me. I'm asleep. Mind your business. Right? I'm trying to go to bed. I'm not trying to snuggle. Like I'm trying to get some rest up in here. Like, but in the beginning, you're just kind of like snuggling. Oh, this is awesome, right? And there's so much vibrancy, and that's beautiful and that's awesome. But you know what I've noticed? Like when I first got married, I got a sense from like mature married couples, and it was always like, that's cute. That's not going to last long, right? Like, oh, you'll learn eventually what that looks like. And there's the life of that takes place. But what happens is like we actually normalize that. We normalize the excitement, the ambitious, like the spirit that just goes, yeah, dude, anything is possible. Man, we're going to love like this. We're going to care like this. This is going to be us forever. And then we can just slowly and surely just begin to like lower our expectations of what it's going to look like and feel like and be like. And that just doesn't just happen in relationship. That just happens with a lot of things. That happens with our kids. That happens with our finances. That happens with our dreams and our business. Like when you're facing a situation with your children and it's just over and over and over and over and over and over again, right? And you're just like, man, like I am doing everything I possibly can to help my child with this situation. And it just doesn't seem like it's happening. And you can find yourself in hopeless situations. And like I said, we don't have the language that says, oh, this is impossible. We say things like, it is what it is. I'm just being realistic. I'm not getting my hopes up. right? Like we find different terms to say, I'll see it when I believe it, or I'll believe it when I see it. Wow. Right? Like it's those things where we begin to carve language around what we're really saying is we're lowering expectations and we're looking at situations that feel impossible and that they feel like they'll never change. And like, this is just what it is. This is my dynamic with my wife. This is my dynamic with my husband. This is how it is with my mom. This is how it is with my siblings. This is how this friend group is. This is how my kids are going to be. Now it's just about what? Managing life. And now these impossibilities are coming in, and now we're not just thriving, we're not stepping into this wholesome like vibrancy of how we can live and how we can function, but now we're just functioning with just merely managing what life is. And if we live like that, then now like the dreams and the prayers and the hopes of what God can do we're not just doing that with life situations, now we're doing that with God as well. God, as long as I'm just healthy, man, and like things are going good and like everything's okay and I get a little bit of peace here and like, that's cool, that works for me. And I'm gonna get myself into heaven and like, okay, cool. Like I can accept what this is. As long as I'm doing some of the work, I'm showing up to church, like I'm doing some of the things, I'm in the life group, like I'm reading scripture, cool. And then now, before you even know it, you wouldn't even describe yourself as a religious person, but we become religious in our actions, in our relationship with God, and we just kind of detach ourselves from what the real possibility of what God would have even for ourselves and even in our own lives. This series is not a talk or an opportunity for us to fix any of that. This is today setting the platform for us and our entire series for us to sit in it. To not escape it, to not rush away from it, to not be removed from it. And what I want you to remember the times and the dreams that you had that once in your life was so vibrant and so alive and well, and now it just seems like it's placed nicely onto a shelf and it's just put into a spot. You're just saying, I'm now more mature. I'm older and I'm no longer gonna think or feel like that. That was the childish way of thinking. Now I just kind of understand how the world really works, and that's not gonna be a part of my life anymore. And I want you to grab that, and I just want you to hold on to that for this talk. And I want you just to potentially think about what it would look like to dream again. Not just for one situation, but what would a lifestyle look like if we dreamed again? What would a lifestyle look like if we begin to consider just God doing something miraculous in our life? And not just for one situation, but what would a lifestyle look like if we said, man, I don't just follow God just because I want to get into heaven one day, but I'm now functioning because I think God can do the impossible things on a regular basis with me and through me. And we're going to look at a story out of Luke 1. In Luke 1, there's a lot that's happening within this passage. I want to give some context because it's very important for us to understand what is exactly happening in this situation, because there's a lot of people that are in this story that would have been feeling very impossible situations that they would have been facing. Okay, that everything about this story just screams that these things shouldn't be happening with these people. And if you find yourself in your situation, whatever you may be facing, there's things that we can begin to believe that says, I believe God, most of us believe this, I believe God can do it, I just don't believe that he will really do that for me, right? It's not about just a disbelief in God. No, we actually have a really vast belief in God most of the time. It's not so much of, I don't think God is this powerful and this magnificent, it's just that I don't think he'll do it for me. I know my situation. I know what I'm facing. I know what I'm experiencing. I know what I've done. I know what I haven't done. I know how this thing goes. I know what I feel. I know what I've seen. It's been far too long. There's a lot going on, and I just don't know if it's actually going to take place for me. And we get to unpack this story, look at a couple principles, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to give you some handles that you'll be able to walk away with so that we can step into not the impossible, but we can step into God's possible for us in our lives. So out of Luke 1, before we step into the passage, everyone say there and then. There and then is our position of speaking and preaching. So that we'd understand the world of the Bible, because if we can understand the context of these words and where they're coming from and why they're saying what they're saying, then we can understand the implications of them and how we can implement them in the here and now. And so what's happening here is this. There's an angel, his name is Gabriel, and he appeared to a man named Zechariah. Okay, this is a priest in Jerusalem. And Gabriel announces to Zechariah that his wife Elizabeth was going to become pregnant and that she was going to bring into the world John the Baptist. And John the Baptist was going to prepare the way for the Messiah. This is a big deal because it was public knowledge that Elizabeth was barren. And she had infertility issues for many years, and she's an older woman, and so she's past actually being able to bear a child. So she is now facing an impossible situation in her own life, and be like, that's not how the body works. That's not even possible for me anymore. So now Gabriel's showing up, and he's saying, you're about to carry, and you're going to give birth to John the Baptist. And they're like, there's no way this is possible. What are you talking about? And now 6 months later, Gabriel shows up again, but he doesn't show up to a priest. He doesn't show up to a scholar. He shows up to a teenage girl named Mary in a very remote place called Nazareth. When we hear Nazareth, that to us is a very important and significant location. Back in the day, it was not. This was an extremely remote, rural area that had no significance. There was nothing special about this place. This had, people said, archaeological writing said it was about a couple hundred people. So don't even think city, even though it's technically a city. Think of neighborhood. Okay, very small. And it was actually looked down upon, had no spiritual significance to it. If you wanted to actually connect, there was no temple, there was no tabernacle, there was nothing about this place that had any type of significance that was speaking to anything. It wasn't Rome, it wasn't Jerusalem, it wasn't Judea, it wasn't Samaria, it wasn't anything that had significant importance when it came to scripture. It was so insignificant that you can't find Nazareth written in the Old Testament at all, not even once. Big deal New Testament. Why? Because of this story? Yes, but not a big deal at all at this given point in society. And so what are we saying? We're saying this, that there's something that's going to take place in the most impossible situation where it should take place. Now, Mary, she's betrothed, which means that's like a legal engagement to be married to a man that's named Joseph, and he is a descendant of King David. This is a big deal. We'll cover that in a second. Okay, in Jewish culture, girls that are betrothed to a man, that wasn't when they were older. That was like the ages of like 13 to 15. They're like a young teenage girl. So there's not a lot of life that Mary has lived up until this point. She begins to interact with Gabriel, and Gabriel shows up and he starts talking to her. He says, greetings to her. You're highly favored. The Lord is with you. She is actually taken back by this. She doesn't understand why Gabriel's talking to her like this, because once again, there's no significance to where she's at. Why would an angel show up to Mary? Why would an angel show up to Nazareth and begin to have these claims onto her life? And then she responds to him, or he responds to her, and he says, do not be afraid, Mary, that you have found favor with God. Okay, so it sets the stage that we're going to pick up in verse 31 to where now Gabriel's talking to Mary, and he's telling her there's some things that are going on in your life, and God has got favor upon you so that you can actually now face a potential impossible situation in your life. That's where we need to start. We need to start with the thought of this. Whatever you're facing, whatever you're seeing, whatever impossibility exists in your life, you need to know that God's going to look upon you and say, I have favor upon you. If we can posture our heart in the belief that says, my God has favor for me, then the rest of the story is going to come alive for you, and there's going to be some principles that you can grab a hold of and begin to implement into your own life. But it has to start with the understanding of God's got favor upon every single one of our lives, not because of what you are doing, not because of what you are not doing, not because of what you've done, not because of your elite ability to be a human. Has nothing to do with that. Has everything to do with his love and his care for all of humanity. And just says, I love you, I care for you, you matter to me. That is the presupposition of how we need to look at what this text is. It picks up in Luke 1:31 says this. Gabriel says to Mary, you will conceive and give birth to a son, and you are to call him Jesus. Quick note, this is not just a cool name, but in Hebrew context, Jesus was the actual word for Yeshua. Yeshua literally means the Lord saves. This is not a nice name. This is a mission statement. This statement is to proclaim something massive. This is wink, wink. This is code language for like the Messiah, okay? Moments before, John the Baptist is going to be born, and he's going to prepare the way for what? The Messiah. Now Gabriel shows up, and he's talking to Mary, saying, now you are going to actually give birth to the Messiah, and this is a big deal. God first speaks, and something's going to take place. Verse 32, he says, he will give you No, he will be great, and he will be called the Son of the Most High. The Lord God will give him the throne of his father David, and he will reign over Jacob's descendants forever. His kingdom will never end. Okay, this is a big deal when you look at this, because the Son of the Most High is not just poetic language. This is speaking of divine authority. When she were to hear this, Mary being a Jew herself, she would have Jewish context and understanding that this is actually like a spoken word of something that I've heard from my ancestors. Not only that, now he's going to say it's going to be a descendant in the throne of his father David, another code language of what? Messiah. This actually comes directly from the concept of 2 Samuel 7, where God promised that David would be one of the descendants and rule forever. No Messiah should show up to Nazareth. Okay? That shouldn't happen in the story. And it shouldn't happen to some random woman that is sitting there, teenage girl, that is not connected to any type of priesthood. There's no royalty here. This doesn't make any sense. This should be underneath Rome. This should be underneath Jerusalem where the temple is. This should be under Judea. This should be under something way more significant than what this is. So Mary has to have in her mind, who am I? How is this possible? There's no way. I understand what these things are. I know the Torah. I've been taught the Torah, and I understand what these things are taking place. Now you're telling me some things that literally seem impossible to me, and she has a response. And her response is this. How will this be? Mary asked the angel, since I am a virgin. I don't think you get it, Gabriel. That's not how things are done here. I know you look all cool and holy and stuff, but that's not what it is. Like, I don't know who taught you sex ed, but that's not it. Like, I'm a virgin. I'm a teenage girl. How can this be? And when you actually look at this and you hear that phrase, can you put that back up there for me? You see that phrase where it says, how will this be? You can often read that, as I read it the first time, to have this symbolism of doubt, have this feeling of concern, have this pushback, defensiveness, right? Kind of sounds like that. How will this be? Like someone tells you something, you're like, whoa, that doesn't make any sense. Scholars have written to this and says, this actually doesn't have to do with challenge. This has to do with curiosity. This is more of a curious spirit that Mary has. She's just like, hey, I want to know more. And I want to tell you today, if you're interacting with God, and as God would speak often, he will speak not through understanding, he will speak through spirit, and he'll speak to situations to where it should provoke like a lack of understanding. It should provoke curiosity. May you be free to begin to ask God, tell me more. I don't understand how that will go because I don't understand how these things work because that doesn't sound natural. Wait, that doesn't sound possible. Because there's things in the natural that take place in our lives that aren't possible. But when God begins to show up to the situation and to our circumstances, then things begin to shift and move around and things become very possible and we don't know how they happen. And so we only have language to describe it as miracles, wonders, profound encounters. Now this gospel, this Bible, this concept of God isn't just a concept of living on a shelf, but now it's alive and well that we get to interact with and function with, and there's so much more that's taking place. So she's walking into this being like, I don't get it. Can you help me understand more? Because Mary, being a good Jew, would know the Torah. What stories would she know? She would know Sarah in Genesis 18, who laughed when God said that she had a child in her old age. She would know the story of Hannah in 1 Samuel 1, who wept in the temple because she was barren. She would have known Rachel and Rebecca and others and the matriarchs of Israel because all of them had infertility issues. But every single one of those stories would have to do with older women that weren't pregnant and had been married and had experiences with their husbands so they could get married. So that screams of difficulty. Mary is 13 to 15. Never been with a man. So this is a difficult situation for Mary. This is an impossible situation for Mary because it's just like, no, that's not real for me. This doesn't add up. These things don't make sense. So logically speaking, Gabriel, that's not how this thing's going to play out. What is that? That's called society. That's time, that's language that we have learned to where if you ever got a God dream in your spirit and you begin to tell it to people, you can feel the rolling of the eyes of people. You're foolish for thinking that. That's not how it works. The young, vibrant spirit that young adults have, and they just believe that the whole entire world can transform for the goodness of God. And you're just like, you'll learn one day. It's not going to happen. Right? We diminish spirit. Why? Because we've experienced pain. We've experienced letdown. We've experienced heartache. We've experienced so much in our own life. And so we then can easily go around and just be like, that's not how it works. And Mary, though, is just like, I understand those stories and I see how that takes place. But for me, I don't even know how this thing is possible. God, help me understand. And then the Spirit of God knows exactly what you need when you need it the most. And says this in verse 35, the angel answered, the Holy Spirit will come on you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. So the Holy One to be born will be called the Son of God. This word, for anyone that's just interested in Jesus, that is following Jesus, that's fully committed to Jesus, like anyone that's connected to that, just real quick, this side note is this. This word, overshadow, echoes something called the Shekinah glory. Okay, this is the visible presence of God that hovered over the tabernacle in the wilderness that you find in Exodus 40. When she heard this, she would have known that this isn't just a typical interaction, that this hovering, this overshadowing spirit is where the Holy of Holies was. This is where God's presence manifested onto people. She's like, you're telling me that it's no longer just this location, but you're going to manifest onto me so I can carry out this good work. Now it's not just the power of God. Now it's the Shekinah glory. Now it's God's glory is going to be upon me. Can I encourage someone for a second? Any impossible situation that you're facing, you are correct. It is impossible through you. It is impossible through Mary, but it is not impossible through God's glory, his goodness, and his ability to bring something through you. If God could have brought in a virgin and brought the Son of God to this world through that, he could have done it any way possible. But he chooses to use us and to invite us into the story so that we can also have an experience of the God story alongside of it. Mary is just a vehicle, just sitting there, just being like, can I be a part of the story? Which she is just such a prominent view of what our faith is, and just shows so much life to what we get to learn from and look at her life and glean so many different aspects of what it looks like to truly be a believer. Why? Because God showed up and chose to use her. What about our impossible situations that we just said, it's too impossible, can't use me? What if we looked at it and said, God, if you can use anybody like Mary, a teenage girl in a no-name place, maybe you can use me in my situation for my family, for my marriage, for my kids, for my business, for my city, for whatever it is that I'm facing. Maybe you can use me too. It's crucial that we have the understanding that God is a powerful God. He's not a mute God. He's not a disengaged God. He's a powerful God that loves, cares for, and wants good things for you and is active in your life. But not only do you just need a word from God, not only do you need the power of God, in verse 36, he also knows the support that we need. He says, Gabriel continues and says, even Elizabeth, your relative, is going to have a child in her old age. And she, who was said to be unable to conceive, is in her 6th month. Her barrenness was public. Everybody knew about it. Everyone knew what that was. And now to hear that she is now 6 months pregnant, and you know what that's saying? That's saying this: Elizabeth's body was impossible. Society told her that's impossible. Time itself said that was impossible. But God shows up to the scene and says, just because it's impossible, humanity doesn't mean it's possible for me. And God actually said, not only is it happening with Elizabeth, it's already done. And I'm going to do the same with you. Do you know how crucial it is that our story needs to be told to each other? You're not prideful for bragging on God. Okay? That's the enemy using a lie so we'd stay silent and we would stay disengaged from each other. God actually wants us to boast in what he's doing in our life. If God does a miracle in your life and you have a testimony, brag about it. Talk about it. Tell people about it. Why? Because there's Marys that are sitting in this room facing a situation and have no idea that there's an Elizabeth that's sitting around here saying, I've already seen God do it. I'm a living testament that God has done the breakthrough, has done the impossible, and he can do it with you as well, because who am I that he would ever do this with? Why would he choose me? He can also choose you if he chose me. He can do the impossible in our lives, but we need to encourage each other, and we need to speak to each other, and we need to look at each other's lives, because when we are facing it ourselves, it doesn't matter. If we never hear anyone else's story, then we're crippled with the thought that it will never happen. But as soon as we hear that it's happened to someone else, there's something called hope that gets instilled into our soul that just says, well, why not? I mean, now it is possible, and why not me? Now you can pursue with curiosity. Now you can pursue with hope. Now you can begin to grab the thing off the shelf and look at it and be like, God, maybe you can do, if you did it with them, maybe you can do it with me. Have you had a family member that's crazy wild and whatever, and then had some crazy breakthrough in their life, and you go, man, if that can happen with them, that can happen for me. Because I already know they ain't doing it all right. And if that's the case, why not me? And it puts us into a category that just begins to believe for the possible things that can actually take place in our lives. And so with that in mind, it's not the reason why we do something called life groups. And the reason why we push community so hard is because this is what we know. You are never meant to face all of your life situations by yourself. And also, if you're married, you were not designed to put onto your marriage all of your tensions and your life struggles. You are crippling your marriage, sir. You are crippling your marriage, ma'am, if you only are talking to your spouse about all of the life hardships that you have. If you don't have solid, faith-believing, God-fearing, miracle impossible having friends that are walking around saying that I love you, I see you, I'll challenge you, I'll encourage you, I'll support you, I'll pray for you, I'll pray with you, I'll be there, I'll answer your phone calls, I'll give you phone calls, I will be there with you. If you do not have that, and the only source of support you have is your spouse, you are crippling your marriage. We're making it far more difficult than it needs to be for the number one reason, and there's a list of reasons, but the number one reason is she has no idea what it's like to be a man in this world, so how can she understand the struggle that you're experiencing? And sir, you have no idea what that woman is experiencing. Yeah, you better say it. It's foolishness. It's idiotic. It doesn't make sense, and we don't do it intentionally. We're not trying to show up and be like, yeah, I know, no. We just, with the removal of actual support and community, it's all we have. So then we have to depend on it. True friendships, true community, a real life-giving, thriving marriage never just happens naturally. You have to make time for it. You have to put work in. You have to carve out the schedule. No parent in this room that is active in their kid's life is like, oh, I got nothing else going on. I'm just there. And I was at my daughter's softball game or practice on Friday, and she was putting in a little bit of work. Little bit, okay? I went to my knee. I said, I love you. I care about you. I got a lot going on in my life, okay? I don't have to be here. I'm not here because I'm just like, oh man, I got nothing going on. How do I sign up for a bunch of extra activities? I'm like, no, I'm here because I believe in you, and I know what you got, and I know what you can do, and I know who you are. And all I ask is this: have fun, smile, have joy, be joyful, and then just show up and do your best. I don't care if whatever the outcome is, just do your best, just show up. We need to show up with a spirit of joy into our situations and just be like, I'm gonna show up and give my best. I don't need to have it locked in. I don't need to have it all together. It might be a mess right now, and I might be facing the impossibilities, and it might be crippling me, but at the end of the day, I'm gonna show up to a group. And we're gonna have life group signups at the end of the service, and I typically do this at the very end, but we're gonna throw up a QR code right now. There's QR codes in the seat backs. If I'm speaking right now, and in your spirit, you're just like, oh, I really need support. They're not gonna solve my problem, but I just need someone to care. as I'm navigating my impossible situations, I want to encourage you to sign up and put yourself out there and take a step of faith and just be like, man, maybe I do need some community. Maybe I do need to actually get around a group of people that are just like me, that can actually just care for the situation. They'll answer the phone call when I call them, or they will just be there. And if I just need some support and prayer, will actually just pray for me. We absolutely need to encourage each other with our testimony and our stories of what God has done in our life, because it's going to encourage people. We have no idea how it's going to encourage them. And we also need a space to where we can ask for help and we can ask for support. And then when we're just messing it up, we need someone to look at us and be like, I love you, and you're wrong. And you need to be better. That's beneath you. Be better. That ain't you. Fix that. You know how many times I sit there and get in a fight with my wife and I feel like I'm right. Ooh, she lost this one, man. Woohoo! Let's go. And then I tell my story, my narrative, by the way, to one of my close friends, and I could just feel from them looking at me that I was wrong. And I'm just like, you're not a real one. I got to replace you immediately. And I'm just like, I just gave you my perspective. I gave you my side of the story. Like, that's the best I got. If she showed up and she said the other half of the story, it would probably make me look even worse. But a good friend just sits there about, I love you. And I'm like, ooh, this ain't going to go good for me. And he's just like, her response to you in that makes sense because of how you just interacted with that. And I'm just like, there's truth that I hate, but it is what it is. What do I want? Do I want to be right or do I want to be healthy? And most of us are walking around trying to be right. What if we actually just said, God, I don't want to just settle for the impossibilities. I want it to be possible. I want to step into life. And oftentimes we need someone else to look at us and help us and be able to speak to what those things are with love, with care, and with support, and just be like, hey man, that's not what you think that is. You might need to evaluate what that is. And if you're looking for a community, really God-fearing, life-giving community, get plugged into a life group. It'll be the greatest thing you ever did in this next season of your life. This next verse is going to be the crux of what this entire series is going to look at and hinge on. And this is basically where all of these concepts are coming up to one idea and one model right now. And it comes out of verse 37. And it says this: for no word from God will ever fail. Another way of saying that is, nothing will be impossible with God. In the Greek, that literally translates as this: no spoken word from God is void of power. There is no spoken word from God. If God is speaking something to you in a season in your life and it feels so impossible and there's so much reason why it should never happen, know this, that scripture tells us that there is no word from the Lord that will ever lack power. You know what that says? That God doesn't just make promises, he performs them. There's not this thing where he's just speaking ideas into the world and be like, go ahead and make it happen. No, he performs them. If he says it, he'll do it. And there's just so much disconnect of what we had. Why? Because it's so easy for us in our impossible situations to get so wrapped up and consumed with everything that's going wrong that we actually don't slow down, take a breath, and have a conversation with God of what he thinks about it. We get so driven on the idea of why it's not working, how it's broken, why it's gonna stay broken, and we're so deferred in our heart of hope. We walk away just feeling completely lack of energy, demotivated. I just feel like giving up on that. That's just not for me. We create language. It is what it is. That's just how life is going to be. That's how the marriage is, man. That's how my kids are. That's how the business is going to be. And I'm just not going to ever get past it. That's how my mind thinks, man. That's just how I am. You guys don't get it. This is what it is. And then what do? We go grab self-help books. We jump on Instagram and we find all this language to validate all the experiences that we're having. And we're validating dysfunction after dysfunction after dysfunction. And then we're just putting it into our mind and we're building a theology of disappointment. What if we just moved all of that and we just said, God, yeah, all of that is what I'm experiencing. All of that is real. But what do you say? Because if your word to me will never go void of its power, then what do I need to know? And you might say something that I will feel, ooh, I don't see how that's gonna work. When God speaks to you and you have no idea how that's gonna play out, let me encourage you to step in with some curiosity. How will this be, Lord? What will it look like? Help me understand how I'm gonna carry a child when I'm a virgin. Help me understand how I'm gonna get myself out of this debt when this is what the situation is. Help me understand how the marriage is gonna be restored when I'm numb and I feel nothing. Help me understand when I've done everything for my kids and they're still experiencing this. Help me understand how this is gonna go. And God would just tell you to keep on taking steps, keep on believing, keep on looking, keep on moving forward. And then you have an opportunity to respond just like Mary did in verse 38. And she says this, I am the Lord's servant, Mary answered. May your word to me be fulfilled. And then the angel left. God, I'm just simply your servant. If this is what you're saying, then who am I to deny it? What if we just became servants? What if we just boasted in not just the impossibilities, but what if our faith, this bigness of faith, would just be like, why are you doing that? People ask me all the time, why'd you plant a church? And I'm just like, I just felt like we were supposed to. You should never plant a church because you think it's a good idea. It's a terrible idea. Don't do that. Okay? You should plant a church in my life because you feel called to do that. You should never start the business to start the business. You should never propose to get married just to propose to get married. You should never look at the next endeavor in your life, in your relationship, in your marriage, with your family, with your kids. You should never look at the dream that you have and just go pursue the dream because it's a good idea that's going to bring a lot of pain, going to bring a lot of heartache, and it's going to bring a lot of difficulty. You better do the thing because you feel compelled and convinced that God's asked you to do it. And when he compels you, when he convicts you in a true conviction, then you will live with the power of God that is moving through you so that you can actually see it come to pass. And your response every step of the way is to say, I'm just a servant of the Lord. Oh, this ain't me. No, man. This isn't because Pastor Chris and me and Pastor Kellen and Pastor Jimmy are great leaders. No, this is God divine why our city church is the way it is. That's because God has asked us to just be servants, to show up and to lead and to experience and to take our gifts, put them together and see what a community of people can look like. This isn't because we got all these accolades of what we can do and accomplish. I'll give you 1,000 reasons why I should not be the person doing what I'm doing. But I'm just like, God, you just asked. And may I say yes to what you are asking. Quick story for you. I got into hiking a while ago. And as I do anything, Tierney calls me like the, what's she say? What is it? It doesn't matter. It's this like new thing that comes up and I get real excited about it, okay? And I'll just jump all in. So it doesn't matter. Like coaching right now, I got so many different things on like how to coach softball and like basketball and stuff. And I'm just like, all right, dude, how do we get these kids in these drills and dialed in? And like, it's just like becomes my world. And I just get real fascinated and I try to like understand it like to an expert level. And then like, once I feel like I've conquered it, then I can move to something else. Hiking comes up. So I'm just like, let's go. I'm watching all the documentaries on hiking. I'm thinking about, dude, like the tallest peaks in the world. How do I now start like actual mountaineering? And I'm just like, dude, like K2 and just Denali and all this stuff. And then like the mountains of deaths that people have from this. And Tierney's like, shut the documentary off. You're not doing that. She goes, you can go walk up a dirt trail, but you ain't like ice picking no mountain. Okay. Like we crazy. And I was like, but it'd be sick. Like, what if we did it? She's like, no. I was like, okay. So there's like in every area, they've got like the highest peaks and stuff that exist. And so SoCal, there's the 6 peaks that are surrounding our area. So you got like Wilson, you got Cucamonga, Baldy, Gorgonio, San Jacinto. There's another one floating around out there somewhere. But so you got these peaks. And I was like, I want to do these. This would be awesome. But as I was going to do them, I read in Backpack magazine that arguably one of the hardest day hikes in all of North America is right there in Palm Springs, San Jacinto. It's called Cactus to Clouds. Okay, so typically when you go hiking, what you're gonna do is you're gonna drive up the mountain, find its trail somewhere in the middle, if not 3/4 up. You'll run like 15 miles or whatever it is, not run, walk, but like you kind of like do the trail and then like be done with it. This one is so difficult because the actual mountain is like 10,500 feet elevation gain. And you're hiking the entire mountain. The reason why it's called Cactus to Clouds is because you start at the base level at the cactus and you get yourself to the clouds. It's pretty self-explanatory. So I'm just like, why not do that? Like, I gotta do this mountain, why not do the whole thing? And I'm like, it can't be that hard. It is. And I'm like, let me get a group of guys together and see if we'll do this. It's like 22 miles. It's basically 16 miles to the peak. Then you come back 6 miles and then you take the tram and you come down. If you're wondering what mountain it is, if you've ever been to Palm Springs, it's the mountain that has the tram that takes you up. It's got the little restaurant right there. So as you're taking that tram, I'm walking alongside of that thing. It was crazy. As we're doing it, I learned something. This is beginning in hiking. I didn't know, in my mind, I was like, dude, let's get to the peak. It's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be awesome. I'm gonna love it. As you are hiking, there's a very dangerous thing that can take place, and you can hallucinate and you can lose your mind because you can kind of get yourself disoriented and you can get yourself lost and you don't know where you're at because every single turn looks the same. And then as you're walking, your body's like depleted, you're exhausted. And this is, I'm telling you, a complete Stairmaster all the way up, has no switchbacks. It's just basically walking straight up a mountain and it's extremely difficult. There was a couple dudes running past us. I was like, chill, bro, we get it, okay? Jeez. Just want to kick them, like, enjoy your life there forever. So we're walking. There's 5 of us. Like, we started at like 1 a.m., 2 o'clock, got our headlamps on, and we're just kind of like, let's make this thing happen. By the time the sun came up, where it's like, we keep on going, spirits are high, we feel like we're crushing this hike. Like, this is dope. Soon as we get to where it's like, okay, we got like 6 more miles left, I started thinking every hill I would hit, I was like, man, that's gonna be the peak. And you look at it and you're like, dude, that's the peak. Like, we're gonna get there. And you would get there and then you would see another hill. That's gotta be it. And then you would get there and you would see another one. Do you know how exhausting that is? Do you know how frustrating that is? You know what happened? Everybody that I was with, and these guys are elite, like, do all these type of fitness like competitions and blah, blah, blah. I was like, dude, I got to put myself around people to where if I'm going to fall down, they'll carry me and it's going to be awesome. And every single one of us, there's this moment where we just got so discouraged in the journey and we're just sitting there like, dude, is this thing ever going to end? Are we ever going to get to the top? And then we huddled up and we just said, listen, who cares where we're going? We'll get to wherever we're going to get to. Lower your head, one step at a time. And one of these fools is just like, you can always take a step. And I'm like, not technically, but I hear what you're saying. He's like, you can always take another step. Don't think about it. Shut your mind off. Your body hurts. It is what it is. Just keep moving. We'll get there when we get there. Who cares? So we just sat there and just grabbed the pack and just started walking, just one step at a time. Not fast, just started moving. And we eventually got to the top and I sat down and I had such a God moment when I got there. I looked around and that peak to me sucked. Hated it, didn't like it at all. I looked around and I said, so what? It's like, why'd I just do all this work for this? Like, this is not awesome. And God was just like, man, you were so excited to get to the top that you lost yourself in the journey. You lost yourself in the middle of it. And it took me back to a handful of spots when I was walking up that mountain and just says, there. You were so full of joy and wonder and excitement. And guess what? The pain was still the pain and the excitement and everything was still the same. But at these points and this point and this point, you lost your joy. You lost your spirit. You lost it. And then it became impossible to you. So then the top just didn't matter as much. Now my favorite thing about hiking is not the peak, it's the middle of the mountain. It's being surrounded with wilderness and looking around and just being like, this is awesome. Then the peak is gorgeous. Then the peak is life-giving, is beautiful, is what it is. And that is so true for our impossible situations. When you become destination heavy or destination focused, the journey is brutal. Every step is so much more pain. Why am I even doing this? It's so much easier to turn around and quit. But when life just becomes about the journey and Jesus is leading you, let him take him wherever you want to go. Stop deciding where you're going. Stop deciding how it's going to work out. Stop deciding what it's going to turn into, and just simply just say, the beautiful thing about following Jesus is he's guiding me. He's directing me. He's leading me. Let my situation become possible and let him decide where it ends up. It may not turn out the way you want it to. Your impossibility may not happen the way you dreamed it to be, but let God begin to change it to its possibility of what he wants it to be. And I promise you, it will be everything you've ever wanted. It will be everything you ever dreamed. It will be everything that you ever longed for. And then you will just begin to enjoy the ride of what it is. Let's make peace with the impossible in our life. Let's make peace with the difficulties and the hardships that bring to our lives, so we can just start taking steps and begin to follow God as he's asked us to. Let me pray for you. Lord, I pray this series will be an opportunity for us to hear from you and experience your life and experience your love and experience your goodness. I pray right now in this room that you'll speak to us, every single person in this room, anyone that's facing anything that's impossible, that we will sense and we will hear your voice, and we will get an overwhelming experience of your power on our life. That you will equip us, that you will teach us, that you will comfort us, that you will provide your spirit to help us navigate whatever it is that we are facing. And I pray that we will begin to step into these next situations in our life. And I pray we name those impossibilities, that we name the things, we write it down, and we just say, God, today, this day forward, I will believe again that you will do something to my life. I will believe again that you will take this dream and that you will resurrect it, and that I will begin to just take one step today. And tomorrow I'll take one more step, and then another, and then another, and then another. And whatever it turns into, God, I just pray that you will take my impossibilities and make it totally possible. Because through your spoken word, there is power. And through my conviction, God, I can begin to carry out the things that you have asked me to carry out. So I just pray, Lord, that there will be a group of people in our city church will just be a church of big faith believing, possible, thriving, having God, a group of people that just says there is nothing like following God. And when we believe in the miracles, when we believe in the healings, when we believe in the miraculous taking place, the restoration of relationships and everything that's possible through you, God. And lastly, I pray anyone that needs strong community, that they will have the courage to sign up for life groups. And they will step into a group and they'll just be like, this is what life is. And there will be a group of men and women to surround them, to care for them, to support them, to be there for them, and that they can actually be encouraged and challenged along the journey as they navigate the impossible situations that they're facing. I pray this series that we will step into more so of having big faith in every single area of our life. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Our city church, I love you guys. We have Group Central that's outside.